Yo 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 guys, what's up? 今天是我第14次的口说跟读练习，开始了哟。
Most distraction, it turns out, is not spurred by the external triggers at all. Most distraction does not start outside of us, but rather starts from within.
Most distraction does not spurred by the external trigger at all. Most distraction does not start outside of us, but rather start from within.
The root cause of why we become distracted is because we feel these internal triggers, these uncomfortable emotional states that we seek to escape.
The root cause of why do we become distracted is because we feel these internal triggers, this uncomfortable emotion state that we seek to escape.
So if we're going to answer Plato's question of why do we get distracted, why do we do things against our better judgment?
So if we were gonna answer Plato's questions of why do we get distracted, why do we do things against our bad judgment,
we have to start one layer deeper with first principles of why do we do anything? What's the nature of human motivation?
we have to start one layer deeper with first principles of why do we do anything, what's the nature of the human motivation.
And when you think about it, most people will tell you some version of carrots and sticks.
And when you think about it, most people will tell you some version of carrots and sticks.
That it's about the pursuit of pleasure and the avoidance of pain.
That is about the pursuit of pleasure and the avoidance of pain.
This is Freud's pleasure principle.
This is Freud's pleasure principle.
But neurologically speaking, that's not true.
But neurologically speaking, that's not true.
That in fact, we do not do things in the pursuit of pleasure and the avoidance of pain.
That in fact, we do not do things in the pursuit of pleasure and the avoidance of pain.
That neurologically speaking, we only do things for one reason.
That neurologically speaking, we only do things for one reason,
And that is to avoid discomfort.
and that is to avoid discomfort.
Physiologically, we know this is true.
Physiologically, we know this is true.
If you go outside and it's cold, that's not comfortable. What do? You put on a coat.
And if you go outside, it is cold. That's not comfortable. What do? You put on a coat.
And when you go back inside, now it's too hot. That's not comfortable. You take it off.
And when you go back inside, now it is too hot. That's not comfortable. You take it off.
If you're hungry, you feel hunger pangs, you eat.
If you're hungry, if your hunger pants, you eat.
And when you're stuffed, oh, that doesn't feel good.
And when you're stuffed, that doesn't feel good,
You stop eating.
you stop eating.
So physiologically, we feel this all the time. This is called the homeostatic response.
So physiologically, we feel this all the time. That is called the homeostatic response.
The same rules apply with psychological sensations, not just with physiological sensations.
The same rules apply with psychological sensations, not just with physiological sensations.
So, when you're feeling lonely, check Facebook.
So, when you're feeling lonely, check Facebook.
When you're uncertain, you Google.
When you're uncertain, you Google.
When you're bored, check the news, check sports scores, check Reddit, Pinterest, whatever.
When you're bored, check the news, check scores, check sports score, Reddit, Pinterest, whatever.
All of these things cater to these uncomfortable sensations.
All of these things catch to these uncomfortable sensations.
So that means if all human behavior is spurred by a desire to escape discomfort,
So that means if all human behavior is spurred by desire to escape discomfort,
that means, as you said, time management is pain management.
that means, as you say, time management, it's pain management.
Fundamentally, if we don't deal with this fact that we are trying to escape an uncomfortable sensation when we become distracted.
Fundamentally, if we don't deal with this fact that we are trying to escape an uncomfortable sensation when we become distracted.
If we don't understand it and learn new methods to cope with that discomfort.
If we don't understand it and learn new methods to cope with that discomfort,
we're always going to be distracted by one thing or another.
We're always going to be distracted by one thing or another.
One of the things that people do that doesn't work is strict abstinence.
One of the things that people do that doesn't work is strict abstinence.
Now, strict abstinence is when you tell yourself, I am not going to do that thing.
And strict abstinence is telling yourself, I'm not going to do that thing.
And it turns out that strict abstinence, for many behaviors, backfires.
And it turns out strict abstinence for many behaviors backfires.
Particularly behaviors that are very difficult to avoid completely.
Particularly behaviors that are very difficult to avoid completely.
How do you abstain from food if you're on a diet? You have to eat.
How do you abstain from food if you're on a diet? You have to eat.
How do you abstain from technology these days? I mean, it's imperative to do our job.
How do you abstain from technology these days? I mean, it's imperative to do our job.
We can't just say, stop using email for 30 days. You'll lose your job. You'll get fired.
We can't just say, stop using email for 30 days. You'll lose your job. You'll get fired.
So, for those type of potential distractions,
we don't want to just abstain.
and just to dive into, because I think the research is so interesting.
And just to dive in, because I think a research is so interesting.
When we do abstain,
when we do abstain,
we tell ourselves, no, absolutely not.
When we tell ourselves, no, absolutely not.
It's almost like pulling on a rubber band.
It's almost like pulling on a rubber band.
And when you pull on a rubber band, you stretch it, stretch it.
And when you're pull on a rubber band,
stretch it, stretch it, and you let go.
You stretch, and you let go.
It doesn't just go back to where you started. It ricochets even further.
It doesn't just go back to where you started. It ricochets even further.
And that's what happens when we employ strict abstinence.
And that is what happened when we employed strict abstinence.
We tell ourselves, don't do it, don't do it, don't do it, don't do it. Okay, fine, I'll give in.
We tell ourselves, don't do it, don't do it, don't do it. Okay, fine, I'll give in.
And that sensation of relieving the discomfort.
And that sensation of relieving the discomfort.
Of telling yourself not to.
Of telling yourself not to.
Is it self-pleasurable?
It is self-pleasurable.
This is a big reason why smokers get addicted to cigarettes.
This is a reason why smokers get addicted to cigarettes.
What gets them to keep smoking?
What gets them to keep smoking?
It's not only the physiological effects of the nicotine.
It's not only the physiological effect of the nicotine.
What more so gets them addicted
is
telling themselves, don't do it, don't do it, don't do it. Finally,
it's telling themselves, don't do it, don't do it, don't do it, don't do it.
I smoke.
Finally, I smoked.
And now I'm relieved of the discomfort of having to tell myself, don't do it.
And now I'm relieving of the discomfort of having to tell myself, don't do it.
So strict abstinence oftentimes backfires.
So strict abstinence oftentimes backfires.
Because when we finally do give in,
we are wiring our neural circuitry.
We are wiring our neural circuitry
To expect, oh, when I feel the discomfort of
when I feel the discomfort of
something,
not wanting something,
giving in makes it feel so pleasurable.
giving in makes it feel so pleasurable.
Not because the behavior itself is pleasurable, but
Not because itself feel pleasurable,
leaves us of the discomfort.
but because it relieves us of the discomfort
Ourselves no.
of telling ourselves no.
So instead of you telling yourself no,
So instead of you're telling yourself no,
what you can do is employ a technique like this 10-minute rule.
what you can do is employ a technique like this 10-minute rule.
Here's how it works.
Here's how it works.
You tell yourself you can give in to that distraction in 10 minutes.
You tell yourself you can give into the distraction in 10 minutes.
10 minutes of doing what psychologists call surfing the urge.
10 minutes of doing what psychology calls surfing the urge.
When it comes to these uncomfortable emotional states,
When it comes to this uncomfortable emotion state,
we know that emotions don't last forever.
we know that emotions don't last forever.
In the moment, we think they will last forever.
In the moment, we think that is last forever.
That's how the brain spurs us to do something about it.
That's how the brain spurs to do something about it.
Right? It spurs us to action by making us think.
It spurs us to action by making us think.
I don't want to feel this way anymore.
I don't want to feel this way anymore.
But logically, rationally, when we think about it,
But logically, rationally, when we think about it,
emotions are like waves.
emotions are like waves.
They crest and they subside.
They crest and they subside.
So we can surf these urges like a surfer riding a wave.
So we can surf these urges like a surfer riding a wave.
So what many people do when they
what many people do
tell themselves no,
when they tell themselves no,
they try and not get distracted,
when they try and not get distracted,
they fit into two buckets.
they fit into bucket,
The blamers or the shamers.
the blamers or the shamers. OK， 好了，今天就先到这边喽，大家拜拜，啵啵。